Baruch haba and welcome everyone to a special edition of All Parsha on Parshas Chayei, the Ramban on Parshas Chayei. I'd like to share with you this week two fundamental comments of the Ramban, one in the beginning of the Parsha and one on the narrative of the exchange between Eliezer and Rivka. Let's begin with the opening Ramban. The pasuk starts the Parsha, Vayiyu Chayei Sarah Meya Shana V'Yasrim Shana V'Shava Shanim Shnei Chayei Sarah. And it was the life of Sarah, 100 years, 20 years, 7 years, the years of the life of Sarah. And Rashi interprets this pasuk. Why does it say Shana by each one? In other words, it should just say Vayiyu Chayei Sarah Meya V'Esrim V'Shava Shanim. Why does it say Meya Shana V'Esrim Shana V'Shava Shanim? Why interrupt and chop up each number with the word Shana? And Rashi says the reason for this is to darshan each one by itself. Sarah was, when she was 100, she was 20 for sin. At 20, one is not a bar oinshin, so at age 100, she was as if she was 20, and at 20, she was as if she was 7 for beauty. And Rashi says similar explanation at the end of the Parsha by Avraham Avinu, where it says Shana by each one of his years. He lived 175 years. And Rashi learns when he was 100, he was as if he was 70 for Kayach, and when he was 70, he was as if he was 5 for sin. This is how Rashi interprets the psukim, both by Sarah Imenu and by Avraham Avinu. In Parak Chavhei Pasuk Zayin, the pasuk says Ben Kuf Keben Ayin Lekayach Uven Ayin Keben Hey B'Loichet. So Rashi consistently darshans when the Torah says a number of years and it says Shana by each one. Rashi explains that each one stands by itself. The Ramban takes issue with this. Says Ramban, Meya Shana Ve'esrim Shana Lashoin Rashi. The language of Rashi is Lekach Nichtav Shana B'Chal Klal Uklal. The reason why it says the word Shana by each generality, to teach you, each one is expounded by itself. Basmeya kavas esrim leched, 100 like 20 for sin, uvas esrim kavas sheva liyofi, and 20 like 7 for beauty. V'chein kasav b'shnei chayei Avraham, and Rashi says the same by the years of the life of Avraham. Says Ramban, ve'in midrashay zen nachain. This medrash is not correct. Now, that Chas v'Shalom doesn't mean the Medrash is not right. It just means that the Ramban does not feel this is the pshad in the reading of the pasuk. And the reason is, Shahrei b'shnei Chayei Yishmael ne'amar, kishnei Chayei Avram b'shaveh, v'lo yoyu shavim b'tayva. In other words, by the life of Yishmael, at the end of this week's parsha, at the end of Chayei Sarah, the pasuk says that Yishmael lived Ve'ela shnei Chayei Yishmael me'as shana u'shleishim shana v'sheva shanim. And there, Chazal do not darshan, and Rashi does not darshan, that at 100 he was like 30, and at 30 he was like 7, because it's not true. Yishmael did not have these characteristics and these milos of being at age 100 like 30 and age 30 like 7. So if Rashi is correct, then it should be consistent both by Sarah and by Avraham and by Yishmael. And they were not equal in goodness. You can't say all of the years of Yishmael's life were equally good and righteous, because in the beginning he was wicked. He only repented in the end. And further, just logically, if it says shana by each, it's not to equate them, but it's to separate them, to say that they're distinct. They should not be expounded to equate them. And therefore the Ramban takes up a completely different understanding, namely, kachi derech hamikra. This is the way the pasuk talks. This is the typical choice of expression for a pasuk when describing the age of someone, be it Avraham, be it Sarah or Yishmael. Avol shana shana v'shanim derech haloshin. This is a manner of speech. Umasha amru beBreishis Rabbah, that which it says in Bereishis Rabbah, bas meya kabas esrim lechet, 100 like 20 for sin. Interesting. The Medrash doesn't darshan it by the pasuk by Avraham, only by Sarah. Rashi brings a drush by Abraham, but Chazal only expound the pasuk by Sarah. The reason is, says Ramban, they don't darshan it from the shana, 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 but they darshan it from the fact that at the end of the pasuk, in summation, it says, Shnei Chayei Sarah. Lo darshu kein ela miyitur halashin. It only darshans this from the extra expression. Shechazar va'amar. It goes back and it says, Shnei Chayei Sarah. The years of the life of Sarah. Shekalalan. It includes all of them. Behishva oisan. And it equates them. And therefore, the Medrash does not darshan this way by Abraham, because by Abraham, yes, it says Shana, 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 but it doesn't end off Shnei Chayei Abraham. Okay, we move on to another Ramban, and this is a situation where Rashi has a very well-known and famous comment, and the way the Ramban learns is not as well-known. Let's start with the following question. Is a person allowed to lie when, if they would not lie, they would appear to others as foolish and silly? Can you lie to basically look better? And it would seem that the answer to this question would depend on the way to read the psukim, a machlokes, Rashi and the Ramban. We all know that when Eliezer encounters Rivka, so first the pasuk says that Vayhi kasher kilo agmalim lishtois, parak chav dalet pasuk chav beis, and it was when the camels finished drinking. Vayikach ha'ish nezem zahav, the man took a golden nose ring, beka mishkalai, weighing a beka, ushnei tzmidim al yadeha, and 2 bracelets on her arm, asar zahav mishkalam, weighing 10 zahav. And after he gave Rivka the jewelry, Vayomer bas miyad, he asked, "Who are you? Hagidar nali, please let me know. Do you have a place for me to sleep?" So the simple reading of the pasuk is that Eliezer first gave her the jewelry and then asked who she was. Now later on, Perek Chav Daled, when he is telling Lavan and Besuel what happened, so he says, Vatimaher v'atorid kadmei Allah, she hastened and she let down her jug, and v'atomer shesei v'gam gamal lecha ashke v'eisht, and I drank v'gam hagamal mishkas, I gave the camels to drink, and v'eshal oisa, I asked her v'oimar bas miyad, I asked her, who are you? V'atomer shesei bas Besuel ben Nachar. So now that I know who she was, then v'osman esem alapa tzmina yadeh, I put the nose ring on her nose and the bracelets on her arm. Wait a second, how could Eliezer lie? That's not what happened. He first gave her the jewelry and then he asked who she was. Why is he saying he asked who she was and then he gave her the jewelry? Well, Rashi explains in Perek Chav Daled, Pasuk Mem Zayin, Shina haseder sharehu tchila nasmach yachshal. He changed the order because first he gave the jewelry, then he asked. Ela shelo yispesu b'dvar. He didn't want to get caught. V'yoimru, and they would say, Hey chnasan lavadayin eincha yedea mihu. How could you give her the jewelry? You don't know who she is. So from Rashi, it would seem that one is allowed to lie so as not to appear silly and foolish. On the other hand, the Ramban in Perek Chav Daled Pasuk Chav Beis learns the story differently. That Eliezer never gave the jewelry before he asked who she was, because the Ramban asked a very basic question. The Ramban says, the pasuk says, Vayikach ha'ish nezem zahav. He took the nose ring, beka mishkalai, ushnei tzmidim, and the 2 bracelets, al yadeha, on her arms. Vayomer bas miyad, and he said, who are you? There's something missing in this pasuk. Why doesn't it say he gave it to her? The pasuk never says he gave it to her. Rashi learns he took it, means he gave it to her, but it doesn't say he gave it to her. The pasuk is missing the verb, and he gave it to her. And therefore the Ramban learns, the Ramban says, HaKosav hazeh yachsar hamasa. This pasuk is lacking the act that he gave it to her. Shahayot sarach sheyomer, it needs to say, Vayikach ha'ish nezem zav, the man took the golden bracelet, nose ring, Vayitein alapa, and he put it on her nose, Ushnei tzmidim al yadeha, and the 2 bracelets on her arm, Ulekach ani oimer, and therefore the Ramban says, Ki perusha, the explanation is, he took the nose ring and the bracelet, al yadeha, that would eventually be on her arm when he decided to give it to her. Vayikach ha'ish nezem zahav. And the man took the golden nose ring, Ushnei tzmidim, and the 2 bracelets Shiur alida that would ultimately be on her hand. Vayomer lo, and then he asked her, Bas mi'at, who are you? And when he got the answer he was looking for, Ve'acharei she'amra elav, and after she said to him, Bas Besuel anochi, I'm the daughter of Besuel, Sama nezem al apo, he put the nose ring on her nose, Vatzmidim al yadeh, and the bracelet on her hand. Kasher amar lahem, he did exactly what he said he did. The same way in repeating the narrative, he said, I asked her who she was and then I gave it to her. That is what is being reported here. He took the nose ring and he took the bracelet, but he didn't give it yet. He first asked who she was. When does he give it? The Torah doesn't say he gave it. It's lacking the Maisa. Aval chiser kan, the Ramban says it's missing here, Hanesina, the giving, the chen b'mekoymos rabim, and this is a frequent pattern of how the Torah communicates, that it doesn't always say the verb. Now, even though you could read the Ramban, that the Ramban learns the pasuk this way based on the pure reading, namely it doesn't say he gave it to her, but rather he took it, he asked, and the Ramban says the giving came later. Nevertheless, the Chasam Sofer in Taras Moshe says the reason the Ramban does not learn like Rashi is because the Ramban feels one would not be permitted to lie just to appear to have acted in a more reasonable and logical way. So it comes out that there's a machlekes rishonim. Is one allowed to lie to cover up something that would seem silly to other people? Rashi learns, yes, Eliezer did lie, and if he did, he must have been allowed to. And the Ramban didn't learn like Rashi because the Ramban feels one would not be allowed to lie just to cover over what would seemingly be illogical behavior. Now, lying is an Isser D'Oraisa. Whether you're allowed to or not seems to be machlekes Rashi and the Ramban. It would seem it's a Safek D'Oraisa, and one would not be able to lie in order to cover over something that seems illogical to other people, in deference to Shitas Ramban, who learns that Eliezer never lied to Lavan and Besuel, and what he meant that he took it and he asked, yeah, he took it, he asked, and only then he gave it. So these are 2 really amazing comments of the Ramban on Parshas Chayei, namely the Drash of Chazal, 100 like 20 and 20 like 7 are not based on Shnei, Shnei, Shnei. That's how the Torah always speaks by Avram and Yishmael. It's based on Shnei Chayei Sarah. And then the way the Ramban learns the Psukim by Eliezer and Rivka, in fact, he did not give it to her before he asked. He took it, he asked, and only then he gave it, and the giving is not mentioned in the Chumash. Wishing everyone an amazing rest of the week. Parshas Chayei, Shabbos Mevarchim, amazingly Kislev, Haba Aleinu L'Toiva. Wishing everyone bracha v'hatzlacha.